Early in the course of history, it's full of violence. Battles, feuds, murders, treachery. The incident that to this day still arouses the strongest passions was the massacre of the McKeon, set for the farm down, set for the farm MacDonald, here in Glencoe in 1692. It was not just the fact that 38 people were murdered the government took, led by Captain Robert Campbell. It was the unforgivable sin that Campbell and his men had enjoyed the tradition of Highland hospitality before turning on their hosts. Who actually, in fact, included his own niece and her husband still chastise the Campbells for what happened here. And school children are still taught to never trust a Campbell. To me, it's a somewhat unfair generalisation, as the real true culprits are to be found in much higher places. At the start of the 17th century, the Union of the Crowns in 1603 should have heralded a period of peace and tranquility after centuries of war between Scotland and England. At last, without any further fighting, the two countries were united under one monarch, King James VI of Scotland. But as the century wore on, the Stuart kings somewhat naively failed to recognise the changes taking place in their own country. King Charles I, for better or worse, was convinced of the divine right of kings, at a time when parliamentary democracy was becoming stronger. He was also wrongly accused of pushing the cause for the return of Catholicism upon his subjects, many of whom in Scotland and England were adopting the new forms of the Protestant faith. This resulted in the Civil War of 1642 to 1646, in which large numbers of Scots supported the king. The beheading of Charles I and the Commonwealth under the Republican Oliver Cromwell. The monarchy later was restored under Charles II, but when he died in 1685, the Catholic faith of his brother King James VII was a major factor in the uprisings of the Duke of Monmouth, assisted, ironically, by the Earl of Argyll, a Campbell. While this was unsuccessful, the arrival in 1688 of the Calvinist William of Orange, who was invited to seize the crown by the English government, forced James into exile, fleeing to France with his family. But as was shown by the Jacobite uprisings in 1689 under John Graham of Claverhouse, or Viscount Dundee, with a force mainly drawn from the Highlands, and the deposed King James's attempt in Ireland, resulting in the defeat of the Battle of Boyne, there was always an ever-present threat of a Stuart return. In 1691, King William III, William of Orange, offered a pardon to all the Highland clans who had raised against him in the earlier years, but only if they took the oath of allegiance before the 1st of January in 1692. Alistair McKeon, 12th Chief of Glencoe, who had joined Claverhouse in 1689, despite the 4 months' notice, left it to the last minute to take the oath. This was mainly because, like many other Highland chiefs, his loyalty still lay with King James, and he awaited King James's approval before taking the oath, which, in typical Stuart style, was late in coming. But he compounded this by going to Fort William rather than taking his oath, and arrived at Inverary after a dreadful journey in the snow, too late to take the oath by the set deadline. The government had been waiting for such an opportunity to make an example of anyone who stepped out of line. The fact that this was a section of the MacDonald was considered at the time as a bonus. Over the years, the Wild West atmosphere of the Highlands, they had done more than their fair share of thieving and raiding. And the famous Athol raid of 1685, after 2 successive Earls of Argyll had been executed, and the Campbells for at once went to weakness, the Glencoe men, among others, took advantage of the situation and pillaged huge tracts of Campbell territory. Plans were drawn up by the Lord Advocate, John Dalrymple. Although others were involved, including John Campbell, the Earl of Breadalbane, Dalrymple's orders, the commanders of the forces sent to carry out the atrocities were somewhat chilling. And here is a small abstract of them. You are hereby ordered to fall upon the rebels, the MacDonalds of Glencoe, and put all to the sword on the 70. You have to take special care that the old fox and his sons do upon no account escape your hands, and you have to secure all avenues which no man may escape. This is by the King's special command, for the good of the country, that these miscreants are cut off root and branch. See that this be put into execution without feud or favour, else you may expect to be treated is not a true king's government, is not true to the king's government, nor a man fit to carry a commission in the king's service. Expecting you will not fail in fulfilling hereof as you love yourself, as described at these with my hands, the Master of Stairs, John Dalrymple. On the 1st of February 1692, 2 companies of red-coated government troops, about 120 men, of whom, to be honest, were only around a dozen were Campbells, were sent to Glencoe. The commander of this force was Captain Robert Campbell. He was 60 years old, and through drink, bad decision, and the loss of property from an outrage 7 years earlier, had been forced to take a commission in the army. He was, however, welcome in the Glen, and the soldiers were sheltered and fed among the various black houses in the area. He was well known to the McKeons. He was related through marriage, as I said earlier, but on the arrival of his orders at 5 AM on the morning of the 13th of February, he and his redcoats set about carrying out these orders. Whether due to incompetence or some of the soldiers not being enthusiastic for the task, it's reckoned that only 38 men, women and children of the 200 MacDonalds in the area were killed. Although no doubt many perished later in the snow-swept hills as they tried to escape, and their numbers to this day still unknown. Some were shot in the back. The rings of the chiefs, the rings on the hands of the chief's wives were hacked off her. She soon died afterwards. While the chief was also among the dead, his 2 sons escaped, possibly helped with a late arrival due to a blizzard of the additional force of redcoats, which were supposed to block the entrance to Glencoe. The Lord Advocate was disappointed that the entire clan had not been exterminated. Gradually the McKeons started to drift back into Glencoe, and the Privy Council eventually granted them protection, ironically again under the patronage of the Earl of Argyll, Campbell. John, the 13th chief of Glencoe, was formally allowed to take the king's pardon and rebuild the family's home. But the stories of the atrocities began to circulate in Edinburgh and London, as partially due to the result that Robert Campbell, being drunk, had left his orders in an Edinburgh bar. Of course, the Lord Advocate had many enemies, who were only too happy to stir things up for him, and in 1695 a commission was formed which noted that others who had been late in taking the oath had been excused. King William had demanded that the MacDonalds be extirpated. This was said to have been taken too far for the Master of Stairs, who was deemed to have exceeded his orders. The Stair was never brought to trial, and although he was forced to resign, he soon returned to politics and was one of the architects of the much despised Act of the Union of 1707. It is quite evident by the events of Glencoe, and many other ones since, that successive London governments have found the best tool in their box to deal with us seditious Scots, and the rebellious Scottish nature is in fact Scots themselves. We have seen for years now how Scot turning against Scot has had a detrimental effect on our country, and yet this trait still seems to continue to this day. And it saddens my heart that this seems to be regarded as the norm for most Scots, and it's something we see every day in our lives. From the old firm rivalries and hatreds, football, to the twisted acts of devious unionist politicians. Yet we, the Scots, the sons and daughters of Scotia, those who have descended from these people, those who have fought and died alongside the mighty Bruce Wallace, all in the name of freedom and independence, seem to be quite happy to accept this as a mere matter of fact, and we all play right into Westminster's hand. This is why we're coming here today, in an act of solidarity. We pay our respects to the victims of the same Westminster machine that continues to drag us down as we did 304 years ago. I'm only here to ask you to remove your bonnets, to join me, bow your heads, for a minute's silence in the pledge to those fellow Scots who were brutally slain here on that cold night of 1692.
Commemoration of Glencoe massacre. See you again.